I've watched enough people to know that those who give the most often expect the least in return. They do their work quietly, and most of the time nobody notices. But every now and then, life notices for us. I saw it happen once on a mountain in Thailand, to a man who thought he'd been forgotten. The floorboards pressed cold against his cheek. Walt opened his eyes to gray light and a sound he couldn't place, deep, rhythmic, making the walls creak and dust fall from the ceiling. The ground was shaking. Something massive was circling his cabin. Not one thing. Many. He dragged himself toward the door. His arms barely worked. His legs wouldn't respond at all. Through the gaps in the shutters, he caught movement. Gray shapes, enormous, blocking the morning light. When he finally pushed the door open, he stopped breathing. Elephants. A dozen of them, arranged in a half circle, standing in silence. At the foot of his porch steps, wild bananas, sugar cane, fresh fruit. Still wet with morning dew. We'd love to hear where you're watching from today. Drop a comment and say hello. If these stories bring a little warmth to your day, subscribing helps us keep sharing them. Thank you kindly. 3 weeks earlier, the cough had started as nothing. A tickle in the chest. Walt ignored it the way he ignored most things that inconvenienced him. He woke at 4:30, same as always. The cabin was dark except for the thin line of gray beneath the door. He swung his legs off the cot, and the floor was cold against his bare feet. The muscles in his lower back protested old injury, older stubbornness. Coffee first, then patrol. The mountain didn't care if he felt tired. The elephants didn't care. The poachers certainly didn't. He lit the small stove, listened to the gas hiss, watched the blue flame catch. The coffee was instant, bitter, the way Ellen used to complain about Ellen. 12 years gone now. Sometimes he could still hear her voice in the quiet moments before dawn. You drink that mud like it's penance. Walt? He carried his cup to the window. The forest stretched below, layers of green fading into morning mist. Somewhere out there, a herd was moving. He'd find their tracks today, log them in the notebook, check the camera traps along the eastern ridge. This was his life now. Simple, useful, empty of everything except the work. The cough came again deeper this time. Wet. He gripped the edge of the counter until it passed. When he pulled his hand away, there was sweat on his palm. Just tired. Been pushing too hard. He dressed slowly. Khaki pants worn thin at the knees. Boots that had walked 1,000 miles of jungle trail. The shirt Ellen had bought him 15 years ago, faded now, soft as old skin. Outside, the air was thick with moisture and the smell of rotting leaves. Birds called warnings to each other as he passed. A monitor lizard froze on a fallen log, then slithered into the undergrowth. Walt walked the familiar path, but his legs felt wrong. Heavy, like someone had filled his boots with sand. By mid-morning, he had to stop. He leaned against a teak tree, breathing hard. His shirt was soaked through. The forest tilted slightly, righted itself, tilted again. Get back to the cabin. Rest. You'll be fine. He turned around. The trail seemed longer than he remembered. That night, the fever hit like a fist. He woke in the dark, sheets twisted around his legs, and couldn't remember where he was. The walls of the cabin pressed close. His throat was on fire. He reached for the water cup on the shelf. His hand wouldn't stop shaking. 15 years earlier, the jungle had been Walt's teacher. He moved through the undergrowth, following signs most people would never notice. Boot prints in the soft earth, 2 men, maybe 3. Cigarette butts. A candy wrapper crumpled beside a fallen log. The carelessness of men who believed the forest belonged to them. Poachers. Walt adjusted the small pack on his shoulders and kept walking. The machete at his hip was for clearing brush, not fighting. He was 46 years old and alone. If he found them, he would mark the location, report to Naran, let the rangers handle it, but he didn't find them. He found what they had left behind. The pit trap appeared without warning. One moment, solid ground. The next, his boot broke through a layer of branches and leaves. He threw himself backward, landed hard on his hip, and lay there staring at the hole that had nearly swallowed him. 8 feet deep. Walls of packed earth, too steep to climb. Sharpened stakes at the bottom would have been the old way, but these poachers wanted their catch alive. Elephants brought more money breathing. Something moved in the darkness below. Walt crawled to the edge. His eyes adjusted. A calf. 2 years old, maybe less. Her front leg bent at the wrong angle, not broken, but badly twisted. She pressed herself against the far wall of the pit. Trunk curled tight against her chest. The whites of her eyes showed in the dim light. No sound from the forest, no answering calls. The herd had fled when the trap triggered, or the poachers had driven them off. She was alone. Walt sat back on his heels. The nearest ranger station was 2 days' walk. By the time he returned with help, she would be dead from dehydration or the poachers would have come back for her. He looked at the calf. She looked at him. He started unlashing his rope. The descent was the easy part. He lowered himself hand over hand, boots scraping the dirt walls, until his feet touched the bottom. The pit smelled of fresh earth and animal fear sharp, acidic, unmistakable. The calf panicked. 300 pounds of terrified baby elephant slammed into him. His shoulder hit the wall first. Something popped, not a break, but close. Pain shot down his arm. He didn't make a sound. Easy. His voice came out steady, low, the voice he'd used on frightened horses back in Montana, on cattle during difficult births, on Ellen. At the end, when the pain was bad and she needed something to hold on to. Easy now. I'm not going to hurt you. The calf retreated to her corner, trembling, watching. Walt pulled the small folding shovel from his pack and began to dig. The plan was simple: carve a ramp into the pit wall, gentle enough for her to climb. Simple didn't mean easy. The earth was dense with roots and rocks. His shoulder screamed with every thrust of the blade. Sweat dripped into his eyes. Stinging. An hour passed. 2. The shovel handle cracked, then split entirely. He dug with his hands. The sun moved across the sky, visible only as a shifting square of light at the pit's opening. His fingers bled. His nails tore. The calf watched him, still pressed against the wall, but no longer trying to crush him. That's it, he said, not stopping. Just need you to trust me a little. Not much, just enough. By late afternoon, the ramp was done. Crude, steep, but possible. The calf wouldn't climb it. She approached once, tested it with her good front leg, then backed away, too scared, the angle too sharp. Walt looked at his hands. Raw meat. He looked at the fading light. He dug more, made the ramp longer, gentler. His back had stopped hurting hours ago, which meant something had gone numb that shouldn't have. Come on, he said. 1 foot, that's all. 1 foot, and then another. Near sunset, she tried. Her good leg found purchase. Then the bad one. Dragging. She slipped. Started to fall backward. Walt moved without thinking. He braced himself behind her, hands against her hindquarters, pushing. If she fell now, she would crush him against the wall, kill him without meaning to. She didn't fall. 1 step, another. Her front legs reached the edge, clawed at the grass, pulled. She was out. Walt climbed after her, slowly, every muscle in his body shaking. When he reached the top, he collapsed on his back in the leaves, staring at the darkening sky. The calf stood a few feet away, not running, just watching him. He saw the wound on her left ear cure, now a deep V-shaped notch where the wire trigger had cut her. It would scar. She would carry that mark forever. "Go on," he said. His voice was barely a whisper. "Find your people." She didn't move. Then from deep in the forest a low rumble, another answering. The infrasound that elephants used to communicate across miles. The herd, coming back for her, coming. The calf's ears spread wide. She trumpeted high, sharp, unmistakably young. Then she turned and ran toward the sound, crashing through the undergrowth until the forest swallowed her completely. Walt lay in the dirt, alone, covered in mud and blood that was mostly his own. "Well," he said to no one, "that's enough for one day." He never expected to see her again. The fever pulled him back. Walt opened his eyes. The cabin ceiling swam above him. Day 3, 4. He couldn't remember any more. His lips moved, forming a word, a name. The rangers had told him, years later, what they called the calf he'd saved. The one with the notched ear who kept returning to this part of the forest. May Doc, Mother Flower. He'd seen her from a distance twice since then. A glimpse of gray through the trees. The shape of her. Larger each time. Last year, Naran had shown him photographs from the camera traps May Doc with a calf of her own, grazing near the eastern ridge. She came back to this mountain, again and again. Walt had always assumed it was coincidence. Territory? Food sources? He never considered that she might be coming back for him. Now, in the grip of fever. He heard something. Felt it. Rather a vibration in the floorboards beneath his cheek. Rhythmic, heavy. Getting closer. Day 4. Walt knew it was day 4 because he'd been scratching marks on the wall beside his cot. 4 lines now. 4 days since the fever took hold. He tried to stand. His legs folded. He caught himself on the wall, fingernails scraping wood, and hung there for a long moment, breathing through his teeth. The cabin was 12 feet wide. The shelf with the water jug was 6 feet away. He might as well try to reach the moon. He moved along the wall, one hand flat against the rough planks, shuffling his feet. The floor tilted beneath him, or seemed to. His vision kept going gray at the edges, then snapping back. The water jug was nearly empty. He'd been rationing. 1 cup in the morning, 1 at night. He'd collected rainwater 2 nights ago from the barrel outside the door, not much, but enough to stretch another day, maybe 2. He lifted the jug now, felt the weight, less than he'd hoped. Food had run out 2 days ago. The radio sat on its shelf near the door. He'd been avoiding looking at it. Now he had no choice. Walt pushed off from the wall. 3 steps. He could make 3 steps. 1, 2. His knee buckled. He went down hard, hip hitting the floor, the impact jarring through his spine. He lay there, cheek against the wood, watching dust motes float in the thin light from the window. An hour passed. Maybe more. He counted his breaths. In, out, in, out. Finally, he crawled. His hands found the shelf. He pulled himself up, joints screaming, and looked at the radio display, battery low. Niran had warned him 2 weeks ago. "You charge it. Kun Walt." And Walt had said it was fine, because he always said things were fine, because admitting otherwise meant admitting he couldn't handle this life alone. He pressed the transmit button anyway. Static. Nothing but static. Niran won't be back for 10 more days. Walt let his hand drop. The radio was useless. The ranger station was 3 hours away by truck, and he couldn't even walk to the door. His eyes moved to the satellite phone on the high shelf. Emergency use only. He'd bought it 5 years ago. Never used it once. The battery was still charged. He checked it every month, one of his few concessions to caution. He reached up. His fingers brushed the case, knocked it off the shelf. It clattered to the floor. Walt lowered himself down, picked it up with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. The screen glowed when he pressed the power button. 93% battery. Strong signal. He could call the ranger station. They'd send someone. Helicopter. Maybe. Make a fuss. Treat him like what he was, an old man who'd finally proven he couldn't take care of himself. I've handled worse than this. He scrolled through the contacts. There weren't many. Naran. The ranger station. A number in Denver he hadn't dialed in 4 years. David. His thumb hovered over the name. The screen blurred, refocused. The last time they'd spoken, it had been the middle of the night in Thailand. Walt had been sitting on the same floor, cleaning his boots after a long patrol. 3 elephants dead that week, killed for their tusks. He'd found the bodies himself. The smell still clung to his clothes. The phone had rung. David's number. Dad, I have news. Walt had grunted. Something non-committal. His mind was still in the forest, still seeing those 3 gray bodies stripped of their faces. Jenny's pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather. Silence. Walt had heard the words but couldn't make them fit anywhere. Grandfather. The word belonged to a different man, a different life. Dad. Are you there? I heard you. That's it? That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? I don't know. Congratulations. I'm happy for you. Something a normal father would say. I said I heard you. Right. David's voice had changed then. Gone cold. You heard me. Just like you heard Mom when she was dying. From the other room. While you were on the phone with the clinic about some horse. That's not fair. Isn't it? The argument had escalated from there. Walt couldn't remember exactly what he'd said. Defensive things. Wrong things. He remembered David's last words. Though, those were burned into him. Just stay there. Then, stay with your elephants. We're done. Click. Neither of them had called back. 4 years of silence. 4 years of wondering if his son even thought about him anymore. Now Walt stared at that name on the screen. His thumb was shaking. Everything was shaking. He doesn't want to hear from you, especially not like this. Begging. He put the phone down. I can wait it out. I've always waited things out. He crawled back to the cot. It took a long time. His arms gave out twice. When he finally pulled himself onto the thin mattress, he was soaked in sweat and his heart was pounding like he'd run a mile. The ceiling above him was stained with old watermarks. He'd been meaning to fix the roof for 2 years. Never got around to it. What else haven't you gotten around to? The phone lay on the floor where he'd left it, 6 feet away, glowing faintly in the dimming light. He could still call, swallow his pride, admit he needed help. His eyes closed. Not yet. I can handle this. I've always handled things alone. But somewhere, in the part of his mind that still worked clearly, a question was forming. Small at first, then larger. What if you can't? What if this time, alone, isn't enough? The fever pulled him down into darkness, and the question followed him there, unanswered. The fever dreams came in waves. Walt drifted. Time meant nothing. The cabin dissolved, reformed, dissolved again. Sometimes he was on the floor, sometimes on the cot. He couldn't remember moving between them. Ellen appeared first. She was standing by the window, the way she used to stand in their kitchen back in Bozeman, morning light catching the gray in her hair. She'd hated that gray. He'd loved it. You're being stubborn again, she said. Learned from the best. Call him, Walt. He doesn't want to talk to me. She faded before he could say more. He reached for her, grabbed air, the cabin reformed. Ellen was gone. The ceiling beams swam above him, dark shapes against darker shadows. Then David was there. Not the man, the boy. 8 years old, sitting on Walt's shoulders at the county fair, sticky fingers in his hair, laughing at something Walt couldn't remember anymore. "Higher. Dad, I want to see the horses." Walt lifted him. The weight was nothing then. The boy was light as air, light as hope, light as all the things Walt didn't know he could lose. The image shifted. David, older now. 15, standing in the doorway of the barn, watching Walt work on a colicky mare. "Mom wants you inside. Dinner's ready." "In a minute. You always say that." "I mean it this time. You always say that too." The boy walked away. Walt kept working. The mare needed him. The mare couldn't wait. How many dinners did you miss? The question came from nowhere, from everywhere. How many school plays? How many baseball games? How many times did you choose the work over the boy who needed you? The fever surged. Walt's body shook. He gripped the edge of the cot, knuckles white, and wrote it out. When the shaking stopped, he was somewhere else. Montana. 12 years ago. The hospital room where Ellen spent her last weeks. She was thin by then. So thin he could see the bones of her wrists. The sharp line of her jaw. The cancer had eaten everything soft about her. He sat in the chair by the window, not the one beside her bed. Too close hurt too much. He could handle it better from a distance. "Come here," she said. "I'm fine here. Walt? The nurse will be back soon. She'll need the space." Ellen closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were wet. "You're already leaving," she whispered. "You're sitting right there and you're already gone." He didn't answer. Couldn't answer. His throat had closed up, and if he opened his mouth, something would come out that he couldn't take back. The phone in his pocket buzzed. The clinic. One of the mares was having a difficult labor. He stood up. "Walt, don't. I'll be back in an hour, 2 at most. Please." He walked out. The door closed behind him. He could still hear her crying as he reached the elevator. She died 3 days later. David was holding her hand. Walt was in the barn, delivering a foal that didn't survive anyway. The memory fractured. Reformed. He was on the phone now, 4 years ago. The conversation that ended everything. David's voice, tight with something Walt couldn't identify then. He knew now. It was years of accumulated disappointment finally finding words. "Jenny's pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather." And Walt had said nothing. Nothing useful. Nothing a father should say. "Are you even listening?" "I heard you." That's it. The argument built from there. Words piling on words. All the things David had been saving up. All the defenses Walt threw back. "You were the same when Mom was dying. Always somewhere else. Always needed somewhere else. I was working. Someone had to. You were hiding. You couldn't face it. You couldn't face her, so you hid in the barn with your animals while your wife died alone. She wasn't alone. You were there. I was there because you weren't." Silence. The phone line crackled with distance. "She asked for you," David said. His voice had changed. Quieter now. More terrible for it. "At the end, she kept asking where you were, and I had to lie. I had to tell her you were coming. You were on your way. Any minute now." Walt's mouth opened. Closed. No words. "And you never came. You never came. Dad. You let me lie to her while she died." The line went dead before Walt could respond. He'd sat there in the dark cabin, phone pressed to his ear, listening to nothing. 4 years. He'd never called back, never tried to explain. What could he say? David was right. About all of it. The memory released him. Walt gasped, lurched upward, and found himself on the cabin floor. He didn't remember falling off the cot. Gray light through the window. Day 5, his body felt wrong. Everything below his waist was warm and wet. He looked down. The smell hit him before the understanding did. Sharp. Ammonia. Unmistakable. He had soiled himself. Walt lay there, staring at the stain spreading across his pants, and something inside him cracked. Not broke, he was too tired for breaking. Just cracked. A small sound. A giving way. This is what it comes to. He was 61 years old. He had delivered thousands of animals, saved hundreds of lives, built this cabin with his own hands, walked trails that would break men half his age. And now he was lying in his own waste, too weak to clean himself, too proud to have called for help. David was right. Ellen was right. Everyone was right. He crawled toward the corner where he kept a bucket and rags. It took a long time. His arms kept giving out. The smell followed him, clung to him, became part of him. When he finally managed to strip off his soiled clothes and wipe himself down, he was shaking so hard his teeth chattered. The rags were cold. The water in the bucket was cold. Everything was cold except the fever burning behind his eyes. He pulled on clean pants, crawled back to the cot, collapsed. The ceiling watched him. The walls watched him. The forest outside was silent, holding its breath. What are you still proving, old man? Who are you proving it to? He had no answers. The fever took him again, dragged him down into darkness, and somewhere in that darkness he heard a sound, low, deep, a vibration more than a noise, coming from far away, coming closer. Walt woke with a clear head. It happened sometimes with fevers. The body burning so hot it circled back to something like normal, a false calm before the next wave hit. He lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in days, he could think. Did you run away? The question arrived without warning. His own voice, but harsher. The voice of a man who'd spent too many years avoiding mirrors. I didn't run. I came here to do important work. Did you? Or did you come here because staying was too hard? He closed his eyes. The cabin was quiet. No birds outside, no insects, just the sound of his own breathing, shallow and wrong. I saved animals, dozens of them, hundreds, maybe. I dismantled snares, reported poachers, protected herds that would have been slaughtered without me. And your son. He has his own life. He didn't need me hanging around. Did you ask? Did you ever just ask? Walt's hands curled into fists at his sides. The sheets were damp with old sweat. He made it clear. He told me to stay away. After you pushed him away first. After years of choosing the work over him. After you left his mother to die while you delivered a foal that didn't survive anyway. That's not... Did you ever once say, David, I'm sorry? David, I was wrong. David, I need you. Silence. Inside his head and out. No, you didn't. Because asking means admitting you can't handle something alone. And that's the one thing you've never been able to do. Walt opened his eyes. The ceiling beams blurred, sharpened, blurred again. Did I waste my life? The question was bigger than the others, heavier. It pressed down on his chest like a stone. He thought of May Dock, the calf in the pit, 15 years ago. He'd spent 9 hours digging her out with his bare hands. His fingers had bled for a week afterward. His shoulders still ached when the weather changed. Did she remember? Did any of it matter if no one saw? He thought of every snare he'd cut, every camera trap he'd checked. Every report he'd filed with rangers who barely looked at him. 15 years of walking these trails. 15 years of quiet, thankless work. No medals, no articles, no ceremony. No one back home even knew what he did here. Just the work, day after day, year after year, Alone. Is that enough? He used to think so. He used to believe that doing the right thing was its own reward, that a man's worth wasn't measured by who noticed, but by what he did when no one was watching. Now, lying in his own sweat, too weak to stand. He wasn't sure anymore. Maybe David was right. Maybe you've been hiding. Playing hero in the jungle while your real life fell apart. Maybe you saved those elephants because saving them was easier than saving yourself. The fever pulsed behind his eyes. He could feel it gathering strength, preparing for another assault. He didn't have much time. Walt turned his head. The satellite phone lay on the floor where he'd left it yesterday. 6 feet away. The screen was dark, but it would light up if he pressed the button. He could call the ranger station. They'd send help. He'd survive. But that wasn't what he needed to do. He needed to call David, not to ask for rescue, not to beg for forgiveness, just to say the things he should have said 4 years ago, the things he should have said his whole life. Whatever happens after, at least he'll know. Walt rolled off the cot. The impact with the floor drove the air from his lungs. He lay there, gasping, waiting for his vision to clear. Then he crawled. His elbows dug into the wooden planks. His knees scraped. 6 feet had never felt so far. The phone was in his hand. He pressed the power button. The screen glowed. Battery 3%? 1 chance. Maybe not even that. He scrolled to David's name. His thumb shook over the call button. For a long moment, he couldn't press it. What if he doesn't answer? What if he does? What if he hangs up the second he hears your voice? Walt pressed the button. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Click. You've reached David Brennan. Leave a message. Voicemail. Of course. 3 a.m. in Denver. David was asleep, living his life, not thinking about his father on a mountain halfway around the world. The beep sounded. Walt opened his mouth. For a moment, nothing came out. His throat was raw, his voice a ruin. David. The word was barely a whisper. He forced himself to continue. It's your father. I know you don't want to hear from me. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say. He stopped, coughed, tasted copper. I'm sorry. For everything. For not being there when your mother needed me. When you needed me. His eyes burned. He blinked hard. I was scared. David, that's the truth I never told you. I was scared of losing her. And when I did lose her, I was scared of losing you too. So I left before I had to watch it happen. That was wrong. That was the worst thing I could have done. You were right about all of it. The phone beeped. Battery warning. I should have said this years ago. I should have called you back that night. Should have been there when Emma was born. I've missed so much. Too much. His voice cracked. He didn't try to fix it. You're a better man than I ever was. David, you stayed. You were there for your mother when I couldn't be. I'm proud of you. I should have told you that every day of your life. The screen flickered, going dark. I love you, son. Whatever happens now, I need you to know that. I love you. I always have. The phone died. Walt let it fall from his fingers. It clattered against the floor and lay still. He stayed where he was, cheek against the wood, breathing in dust and old sweat. The cabin was silent. The forest was silent. Everything was silent. It's done. Whatever comes next, he'll know. If he listens. If he doesn't delete it. The fever was coming back, and he could feel it rising like a tide, preparing to drag him under, but something had shifted. Something small. The weight on his chest was lighter now, not gone, but lighter. He closed his eyes. Maybe that's all a man can do in the end. Say the true thing, even if it's too late, even if nobody's listening. The darkness took him, and somewhere out there, beyond the cabin walls, beyond the trees, something was moving through the forest, something large, something that remembered. Day 6. Walt lay on the floor. He didn't remember choosing the floor over the cot. It didn't matter anymore. The water had run out. The rainwater barrel was empty. His lips were cracked, his tongue thick and dry against the roof of his mouth. When he swallowed, it felt like swallowing broken glass. He had stopped trying to move. The cabin existed around him: walls, ceiling, the shelf with the dead phone, the window showing a square of gray sky. These things were real, but also far away, belonging to a world he was slowly leaving. So this is how it ends? He'd thought about death before, Saut. Every man his age did. But he'd always imagined something faster. A fall on the trail, a snake he didn't see in time, something quick and clean, the way animals died in the wild. Not this. Not lying in a cabin that smelled of sickness and waste, too weak to crawl to the door, too proud to have called for help when calling might have mattered. Pride, that's what killed you. Not the fever. Not the isolation. Pride. His bladder released again. He felt the warmth spread beneath him, soaking through his clean pants, his last clean pants pooling on the wooden floor. He didn't have the strength to move away from it. Didn't have the strength to care. The smell rose around him. Urine and old sweat and something else now, something sour. The smell of a body giving up. This is you, Walt. This is who you really are. Not the mountain man. Not the elephant protector. Just a sick old fool lying in his own piss, waiting to die. His mind kept returning to the voicemail. The words he'd left on David's phone in the middle of the night. He'd meant them. Every one. But now, in the slow hours of dying, they seemed pathetic. A man spends his whole life running away, and at the end, he leaves a weepy message on voicemail, expects that to fix everything. David would listen to it. Maybe. Or maybe he'd see the unfamiliar number, assume it was spam, delete it without a second thought. Or maybe he'd listen, and it would mean nothing. Words couldn't undo 4 years of silence, couldn't undo a lifetime of choosing animals over people, couldn't undo the image of his mother dying while his father delivered a dead foal in a barn. He'll delete it, and he'll be right to. Who wants to hear their dying father whimper into a phone? The shame spread through him, worse than the fever, worse than the thirst. He had spent his whole life being capable, being strong, being the man who handled things alone because asking for help was weakness. And now, look at him. 61 years old, lying in his own filth, the stench so thick he could taste it. His body had betrayed him completely: bowels, bladder, muscles, all of it, everything he'd built himself on, stripped away. This is who you really are under all the pride, a helpless old man in a dirty cabin, waiting for nothing. He thought about his funeral. There wouldn't be one. Not really. Niran would find him eventually a week from now. Maybe more. The body would be bloated by then. Unrecognizable. The rangers would bury him somewhere on the mountain because transporting a corpse down those trails wasn't worth the trouble. No headstone, no service, no one standing by the grave. David wouldn't come. Why would he? He'd gotten the voicemail maybe and felt nothing but embarrassment. His father, begging for forgiveness at the end, pathetic. The final confirmation that he'd been right to cut him off. You couldn't even die with dignity. You had to make it about yourself one last time. Had to burden him with your guilt. Ellen would have come, but Ellen was dead. And Walt hadn't even been there for that. You couldn't sit with her. At the end, that's what David said. And he was right. You've spent your whole life leaving. And now everyone has left you. The light through the window changed. Afternoon fading. Time passing without him, indifferent to whether he lived or died. His body was shutting down. He could feel it. The slow failure of systems that had served him for 61 years. Finally giving up. Hands he couldn't feel anymore. Feet that had walked thousands of miles. Now just dead weight at the ends of his legs. Breathing shallow. Each inhale an effort. Each exhale a small surrender. Heart beating too fast. Then too slow. Then too fast again. Working harder than it should for a body that had already quit. Not long now. He wasn't afraid. That surprised him. He'd expected fear. Instead, there was just tiredness. A bone-deep exhaustion that wanted only to stop. Let it end. Let it be over. You've done enough damage, hurt enough people, disappointed everyone who ever needed you. Time to stop. Night fell. The cabin went dark. Walt lay in that darkness, eyes open but seeing nothing. The smell of his own failure thick in his nostrils. Sleep came, or something like sleep. A drifting. He dreamed of nothing. That was worse than the nightmares. Just empty black, stretching forever. Then something. A vibration. So faint he thought he'd imagined it. A tremor in the floorboards beneath his cheek. His eyes opened. The cabin was still dark. Moonlight through the window, thin and pale, the floor was cold and wet beneath him. The smell was unbearable. He lay still, listening. There it was again, below the range of hearing, a pulse in the wood, in his chest, in his teeth. Low, deep, rhythmic, getting closer. The walls of the cabin creaked. Dust fell from the ceiling beams. The dead phone on the floor rattled. Shifted an inch. Walt's heart stuttered. He knew that sound. Knew it in his bones from 15 years of walking these forests. Elephant infrasound, the way they talked to each other across miles, the way they called in the dark. But elephants didn't come to cabins, didn't approach humans, didn't surround buildings like the ground shook. Heavy footsteps, multiple, circling outside, more than one, many, and they were stopping right outside his door. Walt dragged himself toward the door. His arms screamed. His legs wouldn't respond at all. He pulled himself with elbows and forearms, inch by inch across the rough planks. The wet floor scraped against his stomach. The smell of his own waste trailed behind him. He didn't care anymore. The cabin was 12 feet wide. It took him forever to cross it. The ground kept shaking. The walls kept creaking. Outside, something massive was moving, multiple somethings. His hand found the door. The latch was above him, too high to reach from the floor. He grabbed the frame, pulled himself up to his knees. His vision went gray. He held on until it cleared. The latch clicked. The door swung open. Dawn light flooded in. And then he saw them. Gray. A wall of gray. Elephants, at least a dozen, arranged in a half-circle around his cabin. They stood motionless, ears forward, watching. The nearest was 15 feet from his porch. Close enough that he could see the texture of her skin, the deep wrinkles around her eyes, the slow rise and fall of her breath. Walt's hand slipped. He fell forward, caught himself on the doorframe, hung there with his legs useless beneath him. The elephants didn't move. He blinked again. The fever was playing tricks. It had to be. Elephants didn't do this, didn't approach humans, didn't surround cabins like some kind of council, but the smell was real. Dust and dung and something else, a warm, grassy scent that cut through the sickness in his nostrils. The sound was real too. Low rumbles passing between them, below the range of human speech. A conversation he could feel, but not hear. Then he saw her. She stood near the front of the group, larger than most of the others, but not the largest. A female, maybe 17 years old, with ears spread wide and trunk hanging relaxed, swaying slightly. An older elephant stood behind her, the true matriarch. Walt realized, gray and weathered and watching with ancient eyes. But it was the younger one who had led them here. He could tell by the way she stood, by the way the others oriented around her, and on her left ear a scar. V-shaped, deep, the mark of a wire trap, healed over but never faded. Walt's breath stopped. May Dock. 15 years. She'd grown, taller than he remembered, broader in the shoulders, carrying the weight of adulthood. Behind her, half hidden by her bulk, a young calf peered out with curious eyes. Her calf, her own. May Dock looked at him, not the way animals usually looked at humans, wary, ready to flee. She looked at him the way you look at someone you recognize, someone you've been searching for. At the bottom of his porch steps, scattered on the hard-packed earth, was a pile of food. Wild bananas, some still attached to their stems, sugarcane stalks, freshly stripped, jackfruit, heavy and green, forest fruits he didn't recognize, round and wet with morning dew. The pile was messy, dropped rather than arranged the way elephants left food when they were interrupted while eating. Walt stared at the pile, stared at May Dock. She had been feeding nearby, had come to investigate, had seen him, and had left her breakfast at his door. This isn't real. The fever, it has to be the fever, but the food was there, solid, tangible. And May Dock was there, watching him with those dark eyes that held something no animal should hold. Memory. She stepped forward, slowly. One massive foot, then another. The ground trembled with each step. She stopped at the edge of the porch, close enough that he could have touched her trunk if he'd reached out. Her trunk rose. Walt flinched. Instinct. 61 years of working with animals had taught him what a threatened elephant could do. One swing of that trunk could break every bone in his body. But she didn't swing. She extended it toward him. Slowly, gently. The tip more sensitive than human fingertips brushed his forehead. His cheek, his chin. She was smelling him, feeling him, reading him in ways humans couldn't understand. This is how they touch their dead, he thought. This is how they greet the ones they've lost. But he wasn't dead. Not yet. May Dock held her trunk there for a long moment. Walt could feel her breath, warm and grassy, washing over his face, could feel the delicate muscles in her trunk tip moving, tasting the air around him, learning everything about what he'd become. Then she pulled back, turned to the pile of food, picked up a cluster of bananas in her trunk, placed them on the bottom step of his porch, closer to him, the way she would offer food to her calf. Walt's hand shook as he reached down. His fingers could barely grip the fruit. He pulled one banana free, peeled it with clumsy movements, brought it to his cracked lips. The taste hit him like nothing he'd ever experienced, sweet, wet, alive. He ate. Slowly at first his stomach cramped after 3 bites, and he had to stop, breathe, wait for the spasm to pass. Then he ate more, the banana, then another, then a chunk of jackfruit. May Dock nudged closer with her trunk. The juice ran down his chin, mixed with something else. His eyes were leaking. He couldn't stop them, didn't try. The herd watched him eat. They didn't move, didn't wander off to graze. They stood in their half-circle, silent and patient, as if this was exactly what they had come to do. An hour passed, maybe 2. Walt lost track. He ate until his stomach couldn't hold more, then rested, then drank the juice from another piece of fruit. The fever still burned, but something else was burning now too. Something in his chest that had nothing to do with sickness. May Dock's calf ventured closer once, curious about the strange creature on the porch. May Dock guided it back with a gentle nudge of her trunk. Not yet. Give him space. She was protecting him, the way he had protected her 15 years ago, in a pit trap in the forest. He had saved her with his strength. She was saving him with her memory. His integrity, the years of thankless work, the nights spent dismantling snares, the calf he'd dug out of the ground with his bare hands and never expected to see again. This was what had saved him. Not David, not Naran, not anyone he'd asked. His own goodness, given freely and forgotten, returning when he'd given up on everything. The sun climbed higher, the herd remained. Finally, May Doc stepped forward one last time. She rumbled low, deep, a sound he felt in his ribs. Then she turned. The others began to follow, moving toward the tree line in that slow, deliberate way elephants had. At the edge of the forest, May Doc stopped, looked back at him one more time. Walt raised his hand, palm open. He didn't have words, didn't need them. Her trunk rose in response. Just for a moment. Then she turned and disappeared into the green shadows, her calf following close behind. The others went after her, one by one, until the clearing was empty and silent. Walt sat on his porch, alone again, surrounded by the food she had brought him. His body was still broken. The fever still burned. He was still a long way from healed. But he wasn't dying anymore. In the distance, he heard something, faint, growing louder, an engine, a vehicle climbing the mountain road. Someone was coming. The truck came into view 20 minutes later, battered green, dented fender, Niran's vehicle, unmistakable even through the haze of fever. Walt watched it climb the last stretch of road, bumping over rocks and roots. He was still on the porch, back against the cabin wall, the remains of May Doc's offering scattered around him. Banana peels, jackfruit rinds. Evidence of something he still couldn't quite believe. The truck stopped. The engine died. Naran stepped out. He stood by the vehicle for a long moment, not moving. His eyes swept the clearing, the trampled vegetation, the massive footprints pressed deep into the earth, the broken branches where something large had pushed through the undergrowth. Then he looked at Walt. Coon, Walt. His voice was careful, controlled. What happened here? Walt opened his mouth. The words came slowly, rough-edged, dragged up from somewhere deep. May Doc. She came, brought her herd. Naran didn't respond. He walked closer, studying the tracks, circled the cabin, counting the prints. When he came back around, his face had changed. Rangers report elephant activity near this ridge 2 days ago. Unusual movement. I come to check. He crouched beside one of the larger prints, pressed his palm flat against the earth next to it. The print dwarfed his hand. This one. Big female. Young matriarch. Maybe. That was her, May Doc. She led them here. Naran stood slowly. His eyes moved to the food scraps, to Walt's face, to the dried tear tracks still visible on his weathered cheeks. She bring food. Dropped it right there. Walt pointed to the bottom step. Then she pushed some closer, so I could reach. Silence. Naran climbed the porch steps, sat down beside Walt. For a while, neither of them spoke. 15 years, Naran finally said. She remember. Seems that way. Elephants no forget. You know this. I know. Naran reached into his pack, pulled out a plastic bottle filled with pale liquid. Oral rehydration salts. He pressed it into Walt's hands. Drink. Slow. All of it. Walt drank. The taste was salty, slightly sweet. His stomach cramped, then settled. He kept drinking. Maybe, Naran said quietly. People should be more like elephants. Walt didn't answer, didn't need to. When the bottle was empty, Naran reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone, held it out. You need to call someone. Walt looked at the phone. His hands weren't shaking as badly now. The rehydration was helping. The food was helping. Something else was helping too, something harder to name. "Can I borrow that?" Naran pressed it into his palm. Walt stared at the screen. His thumb found the keypad. He typed the number from memory, the one he'd carried in his head for 4 years. Never dialing. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. "Hello." David's voice, cautious. He wouldn't have recognized the number. "David, it's your father." Silence. 5 seconds. 10. Walt could hear breathing on the other end, could hear the sound of a chair scraping back, footsteps moving to another room. "I got your message." Walt's chest tightened. "I figured you'd delete it. I almost did." A pause. "I've listened to it. I don't know. A lot of times." Walt closed his eyes. The morning sun was warm on his face. Somewhere in the forest, birds were calling. "You meant it. What you said. Every word. Are you okay?" David's voice changed. Something cracked in it, just slightly. "You sounded bad. Really bad. Like you were—" "I was sick. Fever. Couldn't move for almost a week. And now—" Walt looked out at the clearing, at the elephant tracks pressed deep into the mud, at the forest where May Doc had disappeared. "Better. A friend found me. I'm going to get help." "What kind of sick?" "What happened?" So Walt told him. The cough that became a fever, the days alone in the cabin, the radio that didn't work, the phone that died, and then the part that made his voice catch the elephants. "Wait." David's tone shifted, confused now. "You're telling me elephants brought you food? I know how it sounds. Dad, there was one, a female. I saved her 15 years ago, pulled her out of a poacher's pit when she was just a calf. She came back. David brought her whole herd, stood around my cabin like they were keeping watch, and then she put food at my door." Long silence. Walt could hear David breathing, could imagine his face, the skepticism fighting with something else, something that wanted to believe. "The elephant with the notched ear." David's voice was quieter now. "The one you told me about, the one you spent all day digging out of that hole. You remember that? You told me the story, years ago, before everything went wrong between us." Walt couldn't speak for a moment. His throat had closed up. "Dad." David's voice cracked fully now. "I'm booking a flight." "You don't have to. I know I don't have to." Another pause. Walt heard something in the background, a child's voice, high and questioning. A woman's voice answering. "Emma keeps asking about her grandpa," David said. "The one with the elephants. Jenny tells her stories, from the letters you used to write, before. I listen. When she tells them, I pretend I'm not paying attention, but I always am." Walt's eyes burned. He looked up at the sky, blinking hard. "I'll see you in a week, Dad." "Okay." "And Dad, yeah. Don't go anywhere. Just stay put until I get there. I'll be here. Promise me." The word caught in Walt's throat. A promise. How many had he broken over the years? How many times had he said he'd be somewhere and wasn't? "I promise." "Okay." A breath on the other end. "Okay. I'll see you soon." Click. Walt lowered the phone. His hand was steady now. His eyes were wet. He handed the phone back to Naran without looking at him. "Good talk?" Naran asked. "Yeah." Walt's voice was hoarse. "Good talk." Naran stood. "We go now. Clinic in town. You need doctor. I tried calling for transport, but road is faster. Can you walk to truck?" Walt wasn't sure, but he was going to try. Naran helped him to his feet. The world tilted, steadied. Walt leaned on Naran's shoulder as they made their way down the porch steps, across the clearing, toward the truck. At the passenger door, he paused, looked back. The cabin sat quiet in the morning light. The porch where he'd nearly died. the clearing where the elephants had stood, the forest beyond, green and dense and full of secrets. A shape moved at the tree line, gray against green. Large ears, held wide, a trunk raised slightly. May Doc. She was still there, watching, making sure. Walt didn't wave. She didn't trumpet. They just looked at each other across the distance, the man who had saved a calf, the elephant who had saved him back. Then she turned and melted into the forest. Gone. Walt climbed into the truck. Naran started the engine. As they drove down the mountain, Walt kept his eyes on the side mirror, watching the cabin grow smaller, watching the trees close in around it. He was going to live. And, for the first time in years, that felt like something worth doing. Some stories leave a quiet weight in the chest. This one may have done that. The image of a man on a cabin floor, too proud to reach out until there was almost nothing left to reach with. The sound of a voicemail left in the dark, words that should have been spoken years earlier. The sight of elephants standing in silence around someone who believed he had been forgotten. Many of us have carried something like that. The call we didn't make. The person we let drift away because reaching out felt too hard, too late, too much like admitting we needed someone. The wondering, in quiet hours, whether the work we've done with our hands and our years has mattered to anyone at all. Perhaps you've loved without recognition. Perhaps you've given without thanks and wondered if any of it left a mark. It's all right not to have answers. Some things don't need to be resolved or explained. They just need to be held for a moment, gently, and then set down. Whatever this story stirred in you, let it rest now. You don't have to do anything with it. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you for listening.